talking about introducing ourselves. Mel?
Great. Hey, everybody. I'm Melissa Weitzer. I go by Mel. I'm a project manager with Penrod, and I have been in the Salesforce world for about 15 years, and it just continues to blow my mind every day at how much I thought I did know, but how much there is yet to learn. And I will point out the fun fact, I love to listen to 80s hair bands when I go running in the beautiful Colorado outside.
Corinne?
I'm Corinne. I have been in the Salesforce ecosystem for less than Mel, but around like 11-ish years now. So, I started out like a lot of other people with, just typical office manager type role, and then learned Salesforce, and here I am, a decade later. It's been an amazing ride. I really, really enjoy, what I do. And to follow Mel, my fun fact is that in my, free time that I have, I like to embroider, and specifically embroider weird medieval stuff. So I have a lot of fun.
Thanks, Corinne. Hey, everyone. I'm Tina Whittle. I don't have as many years in Salesforce as my co-leaders, but when I was introduced to Salesforce, I drank the Kool-Aid deeply. But I like to tease nowadays, not only do I drink the Kool-Aid, but occasionally I put Everclear in there because love Salesforce, but eyes wide open. And I think that leads in really well to our topic for today, that Salesforce, what does Salesforce provide natively for surveys? We see that. I don't know if you've actually looked at the demos from work.com and the vaccinations, and they have surveys, and they're like, people can fill out these surveys. There's pros and cons to that. And the wonderful thing about this healthcare user group, it is a community user group, is that we can have a very open, candid conversation about the pros and the cons. So what I'd like to do at this point is pivot to David. David is our first guest, David Claiborne. I met him a couple of years ago. He has a success community in the Salesforce success.salesforce.com. And he will tell more about himself. But I got to tell you, anytime I have questions on Salesforce surveys, I go to him and his success community. I respect his skills, and I'll let him tell you more about himself. And he is going to step us through the pros and cons on Salesforce surveys. David?
Well, thank you. Can you give me the screen?
I am, while you introduce yourself.
Okay. Thank you, Tina. I've actually been on Salesforce since August 2004. I still have my developer org that I launched there. So I'm coming up on 17 years. 17 years. And basically, I know most of the people at Salesforce at this point. I was in a briefing in Philadelphia in 2005. Michael Creedon, who runs a lot of stuff, was there, and I was sitting next to David Carroll, who was one of the lead developers. And I said to David Carroll, says, Salesforce doesn't want to do CRM. They want to do everything. And David said, shh, don't tell anybody. Anyway.
Hey, David, if you could speak up just a little bit or bring the mic.
Get the mic. There we go. That's better. Okay.
Perfect. And you're the host, so you can share your screen at any time.
I am sharing. Okay. I thought I would just give you a little bit more background on what this was a presentation I gave a few months ago, but it just talks about, here. Okay, has everybody seen that?
We do.
Okay, what I tried to do in this survey was actually create and send a survey in 20 minutes, and I almost made it. Let me go back the other way. Okay, so I've been an independent consultant for 30 years. I focused on Salesforce solely since 2004. I've started working with Salesforce and surveys in 2006 using SurveyMonkey. And then I started the Salesforce Surveys Collaboration Group in 2018. and I'm based in New Orleans. Salesforce Surveys was introduced in spring 18. It uses standard Salesforce objects. Initially, you had to have a creator license to create more than one survey. This changed in summer 19 when they allowed all users to have it. And so you can now create unlimited surveys, but they charge for every survey response. So if you send out 100 surveys and you get 10 responses, you only have to pay for the 10 that actually respond. Your first 300 are free, but that's 300 free forever. And then after that, I think the current list price is 1,000 responses for $300 or 30 cents a survey.
David, if I could interject here real quick, something that you wouldn't know, or because for Health Cloud, Health Cloud, Salesforce surveys are free.
Okay.
So when you're looking at Health Cloud licenses, you still have to have the Salesforce account AE define what are the parameters of that free surveys, like what is the maximum range and unlimited, but that is a added value with Health Cloud. So I just want to interject that there.
Actually, it's an added value, but Health Cloud is also an added cost. So,
well, yes. And
so
yeah,
basically since spring 18, they've been like 10 releases. They've had a steady improvement. There's more improvements coming this time. The other thing that was after this, they released what's called Salesforce Feedback Management about last summer in July. Salesforce Feedback Management has a lot of features that would be very desirable, but it costs $42,000 a month with unlimited surveys. That's $500,000 a year. I don't know if they sold any yet. Okay, so I'm going to stop with this now and go to just demonstrate kind of what we have. So this is in a developer org. These are some of the ones I've created over the time. And one of the things that was a recent addition is what they call the Net Promoter Score. And there's a whole, there's book written on Net Promoter Scores. And it's really pretty simple. I can just preview. And this is a rating question, so you could change the word. Somebody wanted to see that. Oops, this is the wrong one. There's customer satisfaction. So the one thing about Salesforce surveys that they don't tell you is everything is a flow. When you create a survey, you're basically creating a custom flow that does all your stuff for you. And it's somewhat locked down. This one doesn't have it either, so I'm going to go straight to the one that you all responded to, which was the Employee Pulse Survey. If you're interested, the Employee Pulse Survey was, it's available on AppExchange. It was written by Salesforce as far as their COVID responses. And if you've been in there, if you haven't done this, there should be a link. You can enter your email address and be entered to win a raffle at the end. And what did they win, Tina? I think it's a free certificate.
Salesforce voucher.
Okay.
For the certification exam. Yep.
So I added this screen at the beginning, and this is kind of what the Salesforce does. This is kind of using logic here. When you say, I understand, and if you don't click this, you can't go to the next page. And then there's like tons of questions. And you don't have to actually answer any of these, but there are a lot of them.
Are you going to talk through how this form was built and the data structure?
Yeah, well, the data structure, Salesforce doesn't document it very well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Just get one. All right. I'm just going to kill this and not going to finish it. So, okay. So, that one, this is builder. So when you're building Salesforce surveys, you basically have a page. And on a page, you can do lots of things. You can add questions. You can have branching logics. You can say, only show this question if they said, like, say you have a text that says, you have a pick choice that says other. And if you pick other, you display a text box that says, well, what do you think of it, not other? You're limited in what you can do as far as the page layout. You pretty much are stuck with what it is. And what it is, Salesforce has their object structure is very complex. There's a survey, there's survey versions, there's survey invitations, which you can tie to specific participants. Surveys are actually hosted on community sites, but the community site doesn't have to be anything. It can just be a blank page. And contrary, you don't have to have community users licenses to use it, so that you don't have to pay for any of that. I'll let people, what you can do if you send a, let me go back here.
So let's talk through a little bit about that and why.
So send, okay? So to send, you can actually get an invitation here. So you can have participants in your company. That's this link, or you can have participants outside your company. And you can allow anonymous response or require authentication. If you require authentication, that person has to log into your community afterwards, okay? And this is the link. It's kind of, this is what I was talking earlier. It's a pretty complex link, okay? But you can also send an email from here, and you can select an option. You can actually include a question in your email, but only certain question types. So none of ours right now really work that well, so I'll skip this one.
David, can you trigger the emails to be automatically sent based on a pre-configuration outside of this?
Yeah.
Can you trigger it? Okay.
Yeah, let me show, let's see. Okay, so just a survey. That won't that. This one. This is just a single link. And here you get to specify a recipient. I'll just send it to myself. And this is the email that comes. You hit. Now by doing this, you actually tie that's a contact or a lead within Salesforce. So that means it will be tied to that record.
How will it be displayed? Because if we send an email off of the record, we're used to in the activity stream seeing the emails. How is the survey stored?
The survey is stored on the contact record. Now, if you send it from a case, for instance, and I'll get to that in a minute, we're just going to send it now. And here, if I specify a unique link, that link will be tied back to my record. And send. Now, if I can find my email up here.
Did I hear you though? If you don't click unique link, it won't be stored on the record.
If you require authentication, they have to sign in.
Mm-hmm.
Make that response either anonymous or not. Okay. So here's my link. Your feedback is important. And I click on that and it opens the survey for me. And I'll just put my email in, go to the next page. I understand. And that's kind of the way it goes. Okay. And
can we pause for a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
And anyone else, please unmute. This is a discussion.
You have questions, just raise them.
Yeah, absolutely. And also Mel, Corinne, and I are watching the chat channel. I'm just going to actually just blurt out my questions. But basically, let's pause for a second and talk about that form being built. One of my biggest complaints about Salesforce surveys is that you can actually create questions in the survey that are not tied to an object nor fields. And you're creating your information. So if you have a object with basically a field and you have a pick list, you're rebuilding from scratch in Survey Builder and they're not connected.
That's true.
Which then you're reporting.
Well, one of the things as far as healthcare goes, Salesforce, it says they've got kind of a complicated data structure. So a survey invitation can be tied uniquely to a contact or a lead or a user. If I go into my contacts here.
Yeah, I was going to have a whole lot of questions around the data structure.
Mm-hmm. I think Eldon was unmuting to ask a question too.
Okay.
Yeah, and as he's going through to look at that, we're talking about healthcare and we're talking about forms as well, right? Yep. So whenever I think of healthcare and I think of forms, I think of several things. I think of an assist, I think of PHQ-9, I think of ACEs, I think of all of those standardized forms that are out there that the medical community has. And without the ability to set up that data structure, I would love for our organization to be able to use the PHQ-9 and answer those questions and be able to then toss that data into a place and then for us to be able to report on. Currently, we have created all of our own assessments based upon all those standardized assessments and tools. So is Salesforce considering any of that? Is that anything we're going to be covering today, or has anybody else done that besides our custom work that we have done?
So essentially with Salesforce surveys, and David can definitely answer, there's the lab link, Salesforce survey, it's not survey, it's the survey lab type app.
That's I can kind of respond to that. Because the survey is created as a flow, and a flow can be packaged and then distributed. So if you you said PHQ-9, was that what you said?
Yeah, those are the questions when you go to the doctor and it says, how you feeling? Is anybody trying to hurt you? Just, I mean, are you feeling down?
What I wanted to put that up there, I mean, that long thing I showed you was so what would happen, this is my contact record, and you click on this button here as a drop down. This only works in Lightning, and you can view the responses.
But to your point, David, but there's two things we'll get going on here. What you have is with Salesforce surveys, you do have the ability to create a custom survey, and then you can have it on the contact like you were just talking about. Eldon, that depth of level, this is why we also have Formstack on the line, because Salesforce natively, what their offerings they're not there. Because also here, what David's going to be showing you is a unique link and you can provide it, but easily delivering it outside without community licenses is the challenge in a HIPAA compliant format. So our other guests, go ahead.
The flip side of that is we have to send those out in order to get them filled in. I can't sit there with the patient right now for us to do that. I have to send that to their email. Does that make sense? So
it does.
PHQ-9, I can fill that in, or I can turn the tablet around and say, here, can you take this, will you walk through this real quick with me?
Right.
And there's not the ability to do that.
David has that ability. Health Cloud with surveys, what David is showing with that unique link has that ability, even if you turn the tablet around and the patient fills it out. The problem is then how are you presenting that information through email in a HIPAA compliant format? That's a challenge. Salesforce survey, I have yet to see you may be able to have a unique identifier, but then the other challenge, and that's where David's talking about this part, but the other challenge, and this is why I want David to go into the data model, is reporting on all that information through Salesforce survey. That's why we have Formstack here and other things to consider. David, because I think that's what when you're hovering, and I'll give the microphone back to you.
Here, this is the actual the survey invitation. So if I click on this link, I'm into the survey invitation record. And if I click on this link, this is what you could do in your office. This is the actual survey. Okay. Now, because I'm taking this survey anonymously, so to speak, even though it's got my name on it, it doesn't record my responses from the last time. Only if I finish the survey is anything submitted. If you log in to take the survey, in other words, the guy has a username, password to access your community, at that point, you can actually pause the survey and come back. But that's the only time. So this is just kind of, so it would be possible to create the survey, send it to somebody, so to speak, that would put them on their contact record. Then in the office, you could actually open that up for them if they haven't responded yet and go through the answers. Now, the other part that Tina was asking about, I'm going to kill this for now, is how do I automatically send a survey? And typically what you want to do is like send it from a case. That's what one of the biggest uses is. So what you can do is you have to go into Flow Builder, or Process Builder rather. Okay, this is the process builder that's I've already created in this one to send a survey. So what you do, you have a case. You basically say when the case is closed, send the survey. This survey action is something that Salesforce has put together. It's available as a standard action. And then you just fill it out. Okay, the survey name, the email template that you want to use, okay? And there's the email template. And it's going to go to the case contact ID. And it doesn't require authentication. And you can, if you specify it's a unique link, it'll work better, okay? Because that way it's unique to the contact. If it's not unique to the contact, you lose that link to there.
So David, we actually will need to also pivot soon to Formstack. If you want to talk about a little bit more of the data, I know Corinne also had a little bit quick follow-ups, but we want to talk about the link. There are definitely positive uses, especially if you have Health Cloud, you have surveys for free. But I think, Corinne, what was some of your leading questions on the data, why we are pretty much not fans of this? And we look at alternatives.
So I found that.
Let me go back a step, just to think. If you get what's called their feedback management, you do have the ability to basically within the code map specific responses to other fields on other records, other objects.
But it's still limited. It's capped, I believe, right? So
I don't think it's really capped per se, but it's expensive. It's $40,000 a month.
So let me rephrase. The one that doesn't cost you an arm and a leg and that your people are not as inclined to purchase, there is a cap of only so many fields per object, and there's only so many objects. So we're still into the situation where you're going into survey objects to write reports, the data to extract out the information.
Yeah.
Corinne, let me pivot to you because we really need to, it's 12:30, so about 5 more minutes. And then David, your wealth of information, every time I post questions, other people post questions, you've been so helpful. So Corinne, why don't you ask about a little bit more on the data, your question, and then people can end up following up with you, David, in the success community. But Corinne, what did you have?
Yeah, so my experiences with setting up the standard surveys, not the expensive one, is that when it comes to reporting, so for example, if you want to send a survey at the end of closing a case, and have a survey sent out and say, hey, how was your experience? Being able to report on the response and have that tie back to like the case and the user who worked the case and then back to the contact, I found that to be fairly difficult to be able to do and to be able to calculate, the kind of CSAT information inside of Salesforce. And so I'm wondering if that's been, adjusted with.
Possible, okay?
Okay.
So basically, if you go through that process I showed and you're sending it from the case as an action, Salesforce creates a record called survey subject.
Mm-hmm.
And that survey subject has the case ID and the invitation ID, so it ties those two together. It also has, I think, the contact who actually did it, okay? So now I've got, and then what you have to do is create a custom report type that has survey, survey invitation, survey subject, and then under survey subject, you can actually link to the case as a related object in the case.
Okay.
In the report. So what now you've got access to all the case fields. So now you can slice and dice it by agent, by product, by account submitting the claim, time periods, whatever.
So does that survey subject also tie to the responses? So they're able to tie the response to the case?
Basically, it goes up to the invitation and down to the responses.
Is this the, Danny, is this, I think I've used Simple Survey.
Yeah.
I've used so many different surveys.
So I just threw in the chat, again, if we all know Salesforce native functionalities has limitations. As it grows, it gets better. But normally kind of who's done it kind of as their focus. So Internet Creations is a App Exchange partner and also ISV partner in terms of implementations. While they don't work normally on Health Cloud, they do have a great tool called Simple Survey that gives you that flexibility. We've used it previously for the case closure, NPS, and kind of gives you that ability. So again, just another item to take a look at if you are evaluating. It's definitely worth a phone call and seeing what they can do, because I do know that the reporting on that is kind of what Karen's expecting out of native objects.
Yeah, I think it's a really good suggestion. I know that there's a few different survey tools I've used. I believe I've used this one. There's another kind of free survey lab available on the App Exchange. But Tina, do you feel like it's a good time to pivot over to Formstack? Because I know that Formstack offers, all of this plus HIPAA compliance.
Yep.
So I think it's a good time to
Why do I keep on doing that? No, it is. Now I keep on doing the wrong thing. It's sharing instead of presenting. David, we're going to have to, because of the time, we do need to pivot.
I will say that, the reporting is something that a lot of people have asked about, and I'm in the process right now, and I'll be writing a fairly long blog that'll be published on Salesforce Spin, and it'll be linked in the community. So.
Thank you. And plus the fact that you're talking about that the custom report type is needed on how you can actually access the data. It's part of the frustration. It's not, there are some positives to it, but there is a huge learning curve. So please connect with David on Salesforce Success Community. He is always happy to help. He has a great article on Salesforce Bin and also Surveyforce by Salesforce Labs, which I was butchering early. So we now are going to pivot to our other option. Corinne, you want to go ahead and take this?
Sure. So on our call today, in addition to David, who has been able to give us a lovely, introduction to standard surveys, we also have Zak Pines and Justin Jackson from Formstack. So they'll be able to kind of give us a, overview of what Formstack's able to do in a HIPAA compliant setting, especially, what Tina kind of mentioned earlier around email exchanges and making sure that data is secure. So Zak and Justin, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Yeah, thanks so much, Corinne. The Formstack partner community is really well aligned with Salesforce, and it's been a fantastic to build out the partner team at Formstack. So we're excited to talk to you guys today about our capabilities in healthcare, which is our #1 vertical. So a lot of the use cases we're talking about here are highly relevant. In the interest of time, Justin, do you want to say a quick hello, and I'll pull up my screen here.
Yeah, hey everybody, I'm on Zak's team. I work hand in hand with our partners every day, getting them up to speed using Formstack products, and manage our partner certification program as well.
Since I know people may need to hop off, I'll actually start with the end, which is what we're about to talk about is on the App Exchange. So you're welcome to check out Formstack on the App Exchange. And I know there's probably different types of folks on the call. Salesforce consulting partners are a huge part of our partner program. So you're welcome to reach out to partners at formstack.com. But we can make sure you've got complimentary development licenses. We've got breakout training sessions and enablement sessions available for what we talk about. So just wanted to get that in case you've got to drop early. I'll do just a quick overview on this slide here, and then I'll share a little bit, and Justin will share a little bit over the next 20 minutes here. Formstack for Salesforce is a native form builder. So it's installed from the App Exchange. And really where I think it sets itself apart in some of the use cases you can be thinking about is you've got completely free reign to pre-fill data off of any of your objects, whether you're using Health Cloud or whether you're using, Salesforce for a customer or any of the different clouds. You're able to build forms that, #1, sort of reference any of your objects, and #2, pre-fill data. So what we find is it aligns really well to concepts like single view of the patient lifecycle. So you're not kind of capturing data in a silo. You're really kind of progressively building on your Salesforce data set, and typically doing this, in conjunction with Flow, in conjunction with Process Builder, building some really beautiful kind of end-to-end processes for your customers. We also have document generation and digital signature capabilities. So those often come into play as well. And all products are HIPAA compliant. So that's really where Formstack can shine. And I should point out, for a lot less than $42,000 a month to be able to help customers build complete processes, do so in a way where it's native to Salesforce and you're kind of continually building on a single view of the patient and all HIPAA compliant. If there's questions as we go, feel free to interrupt or jump into the chat, but I'll show a quick example, and then Justin will show a quick example too. Sorry, just trying to navigate my screen here. Okay, I'll pop over here. Formstack forms can be deployed really anywhere. There are use cases where a Formstack form will be living on a customer's website for intake or even lead capture. Formstack has a mobile device, so these forms can be deployed through mobile. They can be sent out through email. We've got customers, scanning QR codes to pre-fill a form at a medical office. Formstack forms can live within a Salesforce community. That's a very, very typical use case. For this example here, Children's Hospital, and let's say we are filling out a patient registration form. Formstack, again, we'll give you a taste of it in a few minutes, but think of it as, drag and drop form builder to manage all of this without code, so that you're able to manage your forms in all the different, formats and shapes and sizes that they may be deployed for a customer. This form here, multi-page form, but you could make it a nicely guided user experience for how a patient would be filling out this form. Things like, conditional logic. So, do I need a translator? Yes. Second question appears. So, oftentimes we'll see, to the point earlier, you've got a paper-based form. Well, maybe now you want to reimagine the user experience for that in a digital setting, because you can make that a better user experience by using things like conditional logic to control follow-up questions and what questions appear. We can upload files directly to that form. We could add a family member, which would add another page and another page. So a lot of control for the user experience. Saving this data will save directly back to Salesforce and all the objects that I would like to update based on that submission. Again, kind of just showing you the kind of things, including document generation or digital signature, can make a process kind of even more complete for a customer. So in this example, let's say I am filling out a form to register as a patient. I want to receive a document that gives me kind of my documentation, and I want to capture a digital signature for that process. To do that, we can push out an email, and if I reload here, yep, it kind of instantly came over to my email through Formstack Sign, and the document that I'm going to review is fully controlled to that customer's template design, kind of look and feel format, inserting data from the form or from Salesforce or both, and allowing me to kind of review and digitally sign this document. A signed document can also be saved right back to Salesforce. So a lot of kind of traditional, if you will, paper-based processes, or that nirvana that Tina was talking about earlier, can be moved into a digital setting, and it's happening more and more every single day. This signed document would be saved right back to Salesforce, as well as pushed out to the patient. And it includes not only the imprinted signature, but a full kind of signature completion certificate, logging, date stamped, kind of all the activities around that document. That's a good example of an end-to-end process. Going to let Justin jump in to show you another example and get a little bit into how it's managed in Salesforce natively.
Awesome. Thanks, Zach. Tina, I saw you unmute. Did you have a point to interject really quickly?
No, do you need the to be made host to screen share?
No, it's popped open for me, actually.
Okay.
So we have a very user-friendly way to deploy unique links to records in Salesforce. So here, just in the surgery survey field, I've got a unique link. It's unique to that record because we take the Salesforce record ID and the form ID, and we encrypt that in URL string. So as I could take this field, put it in an email template, maybe configure an alert with Process Builder, so that maybe 7 days after a surgery date, this patient then gets a survey, and we want to ask them how their experience was. But because we've already collected data on that patient prior to that surgery, we don't want to have them enter information we've already previously collected. So what we can do is take data points from Salesforce, pre-fill them onto the form. That way, the user here is only filling out questions that are really pertinent to them. It creates that nice, warm, fuzzy feeling like we know them, and it creates a better experience for the user where they don't have to enter data points that we've previously collected on them. So here, what we're doing is just filling out the experience and how likely are they to return to maybe that hospital system. Data gets submitted, goes directly to Salesforce, and then we have our feedback response record as a lookup to the actual surgery record. So in that scenario, our form was configured with the surgery object, a feedback object, and then our patient contact objects. Formstack can work with any of your standard or custom objects. And after choosing a primary object, it then allows you to work with any of your lookups or parent-child relationships that you have built out in Salesforce. So as I choose more objects here, it then gives me the ability to continue to add more and more. So we can add up to 15 in one form, and then you also have the ability to make that, sort of a repeatable section as a child object. So if they need to create multiple different records for that child object upon submission, they're able to have a button on the form that just says add another item, and essentially we'll create multiple different records there. And then we can also work with Salesforce Communities. So we have a Lightning component you can house on a community page to have any of your forms housed within a Salesforce community, which we can then also, recognize that logged in user, pre-fill data to the form based off the logged in user if you need any more like a secure login or a portal type scenario for that use case. And then the builder itself, very user friendly. All of my objects on the right-hand side and all of my fields within those objects open up. If I just open these drop downs, I can pull a field in with a drag and a drop. So super simple to configure. And then for any of those, I know Tina mentioned for Salesforce surveys, they have the ability to have other fields on there that don't necessarily collect that data to Salesforce. So we've got these general fields that allow you to do things like put logic on them to maybe create pathways through your form, or we can even take data from these general fields and automatically just merge them into a Formstack document if you want that data in a document, but maybe not in Salesforce. And then our forms can also take payments. Maybe you want a signature sign off on that patient experience so that they can sign off that their information is true to the best of their knowledge. And then another really strong piece that we just heard recently from Salesforce is going to be the conditional logic engine of this application. So lots of form or survey applications give you the ability to hide and show. This gives you a little bit further of an experience, and I'll just choose maybe surgery type. And let's just say if our surgery type is bariatric, and then once I've got that scenario configured, I can then choose what are my conditional logic actions that I want to do. So you've got the hide and show, but you can also populate certain fields with inputs from another field. So maybe as someone fills out their patient first and last name, maybe I wanted to then go and populate that surgery name. I could put things like a user's contact first name. And this will essentially, as long as it matches the Salesforce API syntax, it'll essentially take data from that patient first name input and then populate into the surgery name with that patient's name if we wish to do something like that. So very dynamic rules. Everything in here is just a drop-down menu. You can even set, certain pick list values based off of the selection. And then Zach mentioned, really housing the forms wherever you want. We give you full control over styling. You can, if you're planning on embedding the form to a website, if you don't put any styling on there, it'll actually inherit the CSS of the page you embed it to. So that'll save you some styling time, but you can also put your own logos and a header, a footer, a background image, put your own custom colors and branding on those forms if you wish. And then really, one of the main strong pieces is going to be that data prefill capability. So once we've got our form built out within our publish options, we can take a script, embed it to a page if we wish. But as we choose to dynamically prefill that data, I can choose the objects that I want to have prefilled. So maybe I just want the surgery information prefilled. I could get rid of the patient information, and that'll allow them to enter those data points again. And then this auto-generate prefill links is that ability that we're able to take a URL field in Salesforce, click this button here in a very user-friendly way. It triggers an Apex trigger in the background so that that URL field gets a unique URL specific to that record again, because it is based off the record ID and the form ID that you have built out. And then, obviously sending these out through triggers is going to be the most useful way to get these forms out to those users. Maybe you're putting automation in that surgery scenario where you want to send a form to them to tell us about their experience maybe 7 days after, but you can also manually send forms here from Formstack if you want to be able to manually trigger those as well. Just looking at time, I know you guys probably have some questions, so that's really a very quick walkthrough of what we wanted to show you today, but I'll stop sharing so we can get to some questions.
I wanted to check on Eldon really quick and see if he had any questions, because I know that he made a comment earlier in the chat around his current situation, and he's like maxing out the 3 objects. So I wanted to, if that Justin, if your presentation around the object structure, if that helped kind of clarify some options for him.
This looks promising. I mean, or excuse me, something that we might be able to use because we're doing multiple things, right? So we have our ROIs that we have to have, release of information that we have to have those signed. So be able to put the survey out there, grab the information from their contact or account or person account, individual account, whatever, pull those in and be able to then get them to sign that to replace DocuSign or something like that. One-stop shop would be nice. So this obviously has more configurability in it. And you talk about it being HIPAA compliant. So I don't need to belabor everybody because we have 10 minutes, but I'd like to know more about that later as well. Another colleague of mine is on the phone, also Travis Bryle. So one of us would be more than happy to chat with you.
Eldon, amazing summary. Yeah, you hit on some key points there. Configurability, incorporating data capture, document generation, digital signature in a seamless process, HIPAA compliance. So yeah, great summary. And yeah, we'd love to have a kind of breakout discussion.
So I'll get a small discount for doing the advertisement logo there for you.
Absolutely. Well, and we'll have to cover Tina, Corinne, and Mel as well for making this happen.
Anyone else have any other questions for Formstack or anything else actually that's related to healthcare, forms, HIPAA, the heartache of trying to get rid of 50 million paper forms?
Again, for us, it'd be nice if somebody had a stack that had all the standard forms, at least that you could start with, and then you could plagiarize and bastardize those later for our own individual piece.
So interestingly, Formstack actually has 2 forms products. Justin shared, which is really the focus, typically the native product. We do have what we call like a web-based form builder that integrates with Salesforce and a bunch of other applications. And there we've got a bit more free reign because we're not like dependent on your Salesforce org's data structure. And in that forms product, we do have a bunch of different pre-built templates. Formstack.com/templates, filter on healthcare, you'll see a bunch of pre-built templates. You can fire up a Formstack trial and kind of load in whichever templates you'd like and then map them to Salesforce. Now, this is typically used for intake because it's typically bringing data into Salesforce, but we do have that in our tool belt as well.
So let me beat my uber conservative. I'm very conservative. I spent too many years in an enterprise multi-hospital system. Is that a lot of, I'm a consultant, Mel and Corinne, we're consultants. And we end up working with clients all the time who they have web forms. They'll be using, web to lead, or they'll be using email, things like that. But they'll have these forms out there and they're gathering all this information. But it's actually, if you got hold of that information, someone's talking about their medical condition. So it's really vital to really think about what kind of data you're gathering and when do you need the HIPAA. Now, that's something that every organization has to determine. What is HIPAA? What is PHI? Yes, you have the 18 elements of PHI, but you have to make that own decision for yourself. The advantage of tools like this is a certain level of confidence of what you can have. You do have Salesforce surveys. I love the fact that you can have through a community, you can have authentication. And that's what David was talking about, is that link then can be sent as a custom unique link attached to that patient. And then they'd have to come in and do authentication. That's perfect. But you really, whenever you're looking at your structure for surveys and getting this healthcare information and easily having it, you really need to think about where are they going? And if you're going to have a community or not. Something like Formstack is that you can end up having the ability for a patient to fill out confidential information without needing a community. That's something else to consider. So you have to look at, are you can have a community license or you can have a vendor license? We're not paid by Zach and Justin to advocate for Formstack. Formstack is here because we love working with Formstack. There are other form companies, right? So there's Form Assembly, 123 Form Builder, and Formstack, and we also have Internet Creations. But one of the things I'm very passionate about Formstack and why I will always recommend them is because the learning curve is very, very small. very, very small, and you build an object, you build fields in Salesforce, it's immediately available in Formstack. And that is why I will always recommend Formstack, and their customer service is excellent. But when you're looking at your survey strategy, there may be, if you're just asking their name and the phone number and they're interested in a bariatric seminar, diabetes seminar, you know what? You can just gather. That's a web delete, big whoop. But then if you're basically following up and saying, here's an intake form to be considered for bariatrics, tell us all this information. Now we're in Hipaa land, right? So this is the things that have to be considered and stuff. Corinne, what are your thoughts? Or Mel, you have any other follow-up thoughts on strategies of really looking at, you know, when people are looking at forms and they're looking at healthcare forms, any other input you have on that?
I mean, to kind of loop it a whole conversation back to what we were talking about earlier, I think generally when I am helping any client kind of like go through the process of picking out a solution, a big piece I always circle back to is like how the reporting works. And, you know, their data is going into Salesforce, but how are they going to get it back out of Salesforce, and kind of making sure that the reporting aspect is something that they'll be able to maintain and manage and really be able to access, you know.
Which is critical, right? Absolutely critical. I mean, if we can gather the data, Salesforce Surveys, and that's a recent enhancement, making it easier. When they first came out, you're like, oh yeah, we gather all this data and we can't get to it unless you're a programmer, SQL query. It's like, what? Come on. We don't want to talk to our developers.
A year ago, I couldn't do it. And now I'm like, no, like things have changed, but like, I'm still scared.
Right. So any burning question, we're at 4 minutes. If there's any other burning questions, if not, I'm going to go ahead and bring us into the home stretch.
I just want to make one other comment plug for a product called Surveyvist.
Oh, okay.
Surveyvist is, right now it's $1,000 a year, although that'll probably go up a lot soon. But it's an app exchange product. It's entirely native in Salesforce, and it has all the pre-filling of forms that you want to do. It has all the field mapping that you want to do.
Nice.
And it's, you know, basically go to surveyvista.com or download it from App Exchange. You can use it free for 2 weeks. So.
No, thank you. I mean, any tool we can have, right? Because there could be times, especially if you're not looking at something that's PHI, HIPAA compliant, things like that. You know, all the tools that we.
As far as HIPAA compliant, you know, Salesforce really locks down the survey responses. You cannot create a survey response through the UI. It has to come through a survey.
Well, there's further discussions because where you're meeting the patient is the challenge, unfortunately. Yeah. But great questions. We're at 3 minutes, and definitely, David, I love talking with you. Thank you so much for being a guest. Zach and Justin, thank you again so much for being guests. We know how to reach out to him. We know how to continue the conversation with David. Follow his success community. You know, you have the information for Zach to follow up, and Justin. Great customer service, good people to know, and they're happy to help. So let's get to some of the fun. We do have, for the first time in our user group, we are doing free Salesforce exam vouchers. David actually created a sheet, which I'm not going to display, but we had, everyone who gave email addresses, he put into a sheet. And Andy, I'm going to give away 2, actually. Not just me, Corinne and Mel and I are giving away 2 exam vouchers. So Andy, if you're still on, you are getting 1 as well. And if not, I'll email you. This is still on. Yep. Yeah, Andy, you're still on, but you're on mute. You won. Andy Wines. You're going to get a.
Thanks very much. That's great.
Yeah, and then you can use it up for a year. So I'll email you all the information, get a voucher code. And because we did have quite a bit of people show up, the other gentleman is who won is Jason Motley, and you won as well, the JEMF 13. So congratulations, both of you. I will be sending an email to you. Give me till Sunday evening to get that out to you. And you have up to a year to use that. It's the retail value of $200 that you can use for a free Salesforce exam. So congratulations.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hey, our pleasure. So next up, we have Salesforce Security, Hipaa, and Shield. What a fun and tantalizing conversation. But we do have a guest from the Salesforce Shield product team. They'll be able to talk about future releases and so forth. I am very, very excited about that. We also then on March, we'll have a release review. And at that time we get to talk about, oh, look, they gave us 32 new objects for Health Cloud. Yay. And I think they still haven't put out the OCR functionality with Amazon. Maybe by then they'll have it out. So we'll be able to talk about all the latest and greatest that's coming out for Salesforce for healthcare, as well as Health Cloud. Then we are going to pivot to patient and provider communities. That's very interesting layers there. And then patient call centers. And to continue the conversation, please go to our success community. And as always, sfdchealth.com is your short link to get to our community. And that's it. I think we're wrapping up exactly on the dime. Thank you so much, guys. We will post all this information and we really appreciate you. And until next time, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.